Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a topic that's absolutely everywhere right now, and it's just as fascinating as it is controversial. We're looking at Bryan Johnson's massive, data-driven blueprint for health and longevity. Now, you've probably seen the wild headlines, but today, we're actually looking past all that media buzz to examine the real framework he's building. Johnson is literally attempting to apply a rigorous scientific method directly to the human body, turning personal biology into a highly quantifiable, measurable science. But why go to such extreme lengths? And more importantly, what can the rest of us actually learn from it? Okay, let's dive into this, because it's super easy to just assume Johnson is some billionaire who's terrified of getting older. But his stated motivation completely flips that narrative on its head. His ultimate goal isn't actually just about health, it's about AI alignment. His whole philosophy, which he calls "don't die," is rooted in this deep desire to survive the birth of AI superintelligence. He argues that, as a species, we really shouldn't be walking into this monumental era as a warfaring, sick, and addicted culture. To him, optimizing human health is just a necessary first step for aligning with the future of intelligence. To truly grasp this, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. AI and human longevity, 2. The human body dashboard, 3. Open sourcing biological data, 4. Biohacking versus traditional medicine, and finally, 5. The ethics of influencer advice. Right, let's start with Section 1, AI and human longevity, aligning with superintelligence. To really get Johnson's blueprint, we have to zoom way out to the macro vision of human existence and our most fundamental shared instinct. Think about it. If a window shattered in your room right now, you would instinctively duck and seek safety, right? That is the core don't die instinct. Johnson is basically taking that exact instinct and scaling it up to the entire species in the face of rapidly advancing technology. He uses this fantastic analogy here. Imagine trying to ask a Homo erectus to predict the future. They'd probably talk about hunting, foraging, that kind of thing. They could never possibly fathom the discovery of atoms, molecules, or the entire microscopic world. Well, Johnson points out that we are likely just as naive right now regarding how AI is going to transform our very existence. For instance, he points to a recent breakthrough where an AI model generated a genuinely novel hypothesis to turn a cold cancer cell into a hot one, making it detectable by the immune system. The AI actually understood cellular communication and proposed a solution that was later proven totally correct in a lab. The rate of AI advancement is literally outpacing our own human ability to adapt. And because of this incredibly rapid advancement, he believes we might actually be the very first generation equipped with the tools to solve aging altogether. I know, biological immortality sounds like some crazy sci-fi fantasy, but it's an already solved problem in nature. We know for a fact that certain species of jellyfish and hydras can essentially be immortal. The biological mechanics are already out there, they just aren't native to us humans. Johnson believes that by leveraging AI and modern scientific tools, we can translate those biological secrets from a jellyfish at the bottom of the sea directly to human beings. Which brings us to Section 2, the human body dashboard, quantifying the self. This is where we transition from that massive philosophical vision of AI all the way down to the micro, practical daily application of quantifying the self. So think about this analogy for a second. When you drive your car, you completely rely on the dashboard. You would never look at your fuel or oil gauge and say, you know what, that's way too much information, just cover it up, I like the mystery. Or when a baby is born, we don't look at the doctors and ask them to run fewer health panels. Yet somehow, as fully grown adults, we operate our incredibly complex bodies completely in the dark. Johnson argues it is highly illogical for us to ignore the granular metrics of our own physical systems. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the specific shift he made. He transitioned away from his past hustle porn lifestyle, sacrificing sleep and well-being just to build entrepreneurial wealth, and decided to become what he calls a rejuvenation athlete. To do this, he relies on a very specific set of rigorous biomarkers. We're talking his microbiome, telomeres, brain activity, and literally 16 different epigenetic methylation clocks. He doesn't just guess how he feels when he wakes up. He relies entirely on what the hard data tells him. And to pull this off, he employs a really strict personal scientific method. Step 1, measure over 100 biomarkers. Step 2, isolate a single therapy. Step 3, remeasure to quantify the exact effect. It's like a giant puzzle. For example, by using this exact loop, he identified hyperbaric oxygen therapy as the absolute most efficacious treatment he's used for his body, and that's proven by the hard data taken before and after his sessions.
Let's move over to Section 3, Open Sourcing Biological Data, the N=1 experiment. This is where Johnson's intensely personal endeavor turns into a much broader project for society. It's essentially a massive, single-subject experiment.
See, he has actively chosen to become the most measured person on planet Earth, but not so he can just hoard all the secrets for himself. His goal is to act as a living demonstration. He wants to sift through the immense, confusing complexity of medical measurement, and then just give the resulting blueprint away entirely for free. He points out that, right now, society at large doesn't even understand the basics of health. Like, most of us don't even know how to properly get a good night's sleep. So he's basically offering us all a free masterclass in applying the scientific method directly to human biology.
This highly comprehensive, super data-heavy philosophy brings us nicely to Section 4, Biohacking versus Traditional Medicine, the Paradigm Shift. As you might guess, this level of constant, intense measurement clashes pretty heavily with the current medical establishment. And this brilliantly illustrates that exact friction. Traditional medical care is almost entirely reactive. You have a symptom, you go to the doctor, and you are usually prescribed a single drug to solve that one immediate problem. Johnson's quantitative dashboard, on the other hand, is completely proactive and systemic. It relies on lifetime monitoring, comprehensive marker panels, and those strict measure, treat, measure scientific loops we talked about. He essentially argues that traditional medicine simply does not follow the scientific method in a proactive, systemic way when it comes to preventative health. Which brings us to a really critical climax here in Section 5, Ethics of Influencer Advice, Navigating the Unknown. Because Johnson is so incredibly public with his blueprint, he faces some fierce criticism from the scientific and medical communities. The core question we absolutely have to ask ourselves here is this: is personal experimentation irresponsible? Critics argue that Johnson is an incredibly wealthy influencer promoting expensive, non-clinical experimental advice to millions of followers who might just blindly copy him. Human biology has massive variations, right? So what works perfectly for one heavily monitored billionaire might actually be actively harmful to someone else. Let's objectively analyze this debate for a second. Double-blind clinical trials are the undisputed medical gold standard, but let's be real, they are notoriously slow, and they take place in heavily controlled environments. Furthermore, Johnson points out that even standard science is imperfect. It's a fiercely competitive process prone to academic publishing incentives, where data can sometimes be arranged to achieve certain outcomes. On the flip side, his open-source personal experimentation operates on just one single subject, himself, with totally uncontrolled worldly variables, making it way less scientifically pure. However, it provides frameworks that are actionable immediately for a public that is absolutely desperate for practical health solutions right now. Let's see how this builds in a real-world scenario. Take his protocol with rapamycin, which is often considered the golden child drug of the longevity community. 5 years ago, he started taking it. But his continuous monitoring quickly identified a trade-off. It was suppressing his immune system's cancer surveillance. Then, a recent Yale study showed that on his 16 epigenetic clocks, rapamycin actually increased the speed of his aging. Because he is so strictly bound to the data, he immediately discontinued the protocol and announced it publicly. Now, critics argued he might be damaging vital longevity research by scaring people away from the drug, but Johnson maintains he is just providing further characterization of it, weighing the real benefits against the side effects, based purely on actual data. A lot of this criticism, frankly, also stems from accusations of narcissism. People ask, why the photos showing off his chest? Why all the crazy blood-swapping stunts? Well, Johnson openly admits this is a deliberate strategy. It's a viral playbook. In today's ferocious media landscape, you kind of have to play the game to compete for any attention. He uses these extreme tactics because they act as absolute catnip to the media, which then allows him to draw mainstream eyes toward the much deeper, community-based science of aging and data-driven health. So the crucial point we're left with is this. For a man dedicating his entire fortune and literally every waking second to not dying, he actually has an incredibly self-aware sense of humor about his own mortality. He fully expects to die in the most ridiculous, ironic way possible, like choking on a piece of broccoli or just getting hit by a random bus. His ultimate advice, should he ever see that bus coming, is simply to have fun with it. And it really forces us to ask, in the relentless, hyper-measured pursuit of never dying, what does it truly mean to actually live? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the data, keep seeking structured understanding, and I'll see you next time.